that. And now I'd like to ask Ivy Foundation President Mary Louise Williams to come forward and give you a welcome. Mary Louise?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And look, we are so happy. She had told us that about 50 maybe. So we put out these chairs. We said, well, we're not going to have 50 people. But we are so happy to have you here today. I want you to know that Alpha Kappa Alpha, I'm wearing the colors. They are pink and green. We were organized in 1908. We are the oldest black sorority in the world. Wow. We are the national, and we have, if you notice, we have two of us up there who have been regional directors. We have 10 regions. We have we have 10 regions that takes in all of the states, and we have international chapters. So, and we are professional people. We all have to have college degrees. But we are so happy to have you here, and we want you to enjoy today. We also afterward have food for you, and then we want you to go upstairs. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give you a lot of history about the neighborhood and then about the people that built the house and people that lived here. The Jenkins House was built about 1920 by contractor Emmet Jenkins and is located in the Governor's Mansion Historic District, which was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978. The district is roughly bounded by 13th Street on the north, Louisiana on the east, Roosevelt Road on the south, and Chester Street on the west. The Governor's Mansion Historic District is the second oldest surviving residential neighborhood in the city of Little Rock, with the oldest being the MacArthur Park Historic District. The Governor's Mansion Historic District straddles the southern boundary of the original city of Little Rock, which was Wright Avenue, was the southern boundary of Little Rock originally. That original city plat was filed back in 1822, and the boundaries were the Arkansas River, Wright Avenue on the south, the Quapaw line, which is close to modern-day Commerce Street, and then Pulaski Street on the west. For the most part, the Governor's Mansion neighborhood catered to middle and upper middle class white families after the completion of the Memphis and Little Rock Railroad in 1871. The Arkansas Governor's Mansion, located at 1800 Center Street, is the focal point of the district. And even though the Governor's Mansion wasn't completed until 1950, the land on which it is located figured prominently in the history of Little Rock. The Quapaw tribe ceded the 6.5-acre plot to the U.S. government in 1818, and it was then given to the state of Arkansas in 1836. In 1838, the land was deeded to Senator Chester Ashley, and it later became part of the estates of Roswell Beebe and James M. Curran. The land remained undeveloped until about 1840, when Arkansas's last territorial governor, William Sabin Fulton, built his retirement home, which he called Rosewood, on that site. And sadly, Fulton died in 1844 while sleeping in the asphyxiating fumes of a freshly painted bedroom at Rosewood. Fulton's widow sold part of the property in 1869 to the state for the construction of the Arkansas School for the Blind. The blind school was located there first before its current location. Rosewood was eventually torn down and replaced by buildings for the Blind Institute, which were in turn demolished about 1948 to make way for the new Arkansas Governor's Mansion. The Arkansas State Legislature created a Governor's Mansion Commission in 1947 to choose a site for the official home of the state's governor. The commission chose the site at 1800 Center Street, and the mansion was completed in 1950. Sid McMath was the first governor to live in the Governor's Mansion. Now this house is a good example of craftsman-style architecture. I'm going to tell you a little bit about craftsman. The craftsman style was inspired by the 19th century British arts and crafts movement and our nation's desire to create a uniquely American art form. The arts and crafts movement represented a backlash against the Industrial Revolution and the mass-produced, machine-made building materials and furnishings that it created. Proponents of the craftsman movement also believed that assembly line manufacturing devalued workers and human craftsmanship by separating skill sets so that no single worker ever completed a project from start to finish. The basic philosophy of the craftsman movement advocated honest, functional design and craftsmanship, as well as the use of natural materials. So the two basic principles, honesty of design and nature, natural materials. In the early 20th century, the Craftsman style was popularized by Gustav Stickley's publication called The Craftsman, which was published from 1901 until 1916, and other publications like House Beautiful, Good Housekeeping, and Architectural Record. Craftsman style architecture often demonstrated its honest design through exposed structural elements like beams and rafter tails, as well as the use of natural materials like stone, stucco, and wood. Outdoor living space was maximized through the use of front porches and a lot of windows, and a comprehensive approach was taken to the design of the overall house with the landscape. They would work on the landscaping outside, and they would also work on things inside like built-in furniture, for instance. And if you're over here, you're sitting on the built-in window seat in this back window. That's the one element of built-in furniture that's still left in this house. There are probably others here that they've been removed. Things like built-in bookcases, built-in shelving, and again, window seats. So the Jenkins House is a good example of the Craftsman style of architecture. Some of the characteristics it features are exposed rafter tails. I know you can't see it because we're inside right now, but if you go outside, you can see all these things. Exposed rafter tails. In the front gable end, the top one, there are triangular knee braces as well as decorative brackets in those front gable ends. False half timbering. A front porch behind me, supported by square brick columns. A mixture of exterior wall materials including brick, stucco, and wood. And there's also the built-in seat. Now about the builder and the later occupants of the house. The plat for Wright's addition to the city of Little Rock was filed in 1870 and encompassed the land from Wright Avenue down to 25th Street, which is now Roosevelt Road, and then from Arch over to Pulaski, so it was a very large addition. As Little Rock expanded to the south near the turn of the 20th century, the southwestern portion of Wright's addition was subdivided again, and that became Watt Worthen's addition. The southeast corner of 24th and Chester, where we are now, was undeveloped until about 1920, when the Jenkins House was built on Lot 1 in Block 12 of Watt Worthen's addition. And this house first appeared in the 1922 Little Rock City Directory. It was probably built a couple years earlier. And again, built by local contractor Emmet Jenkins, who lived here from at least 1922 until October of 1929. So, here we go. Emmet Wilson Jenkins was born 1868 at Byhalia, Mississippi, to Henry Clay Jenkins and his wife, Mary Alice, who went by Molly Parker Jenkins. In January 1892, Emmet Jenkins married Sally Jo Munn, the woman that I showed you. Wife number 1. At Holly Springs, Mississippi. Emmet and Sally Jenkins have 5 children, 4 of whom survived to adulthood. Those were Layla, Munn, Carrie, and George. Clementine, their daughter, was born in September 1897 and died in December of that year. Emmet Jenkins worked as a building contractor. He and his family moved from Mississippi to Arkansas after the turn of the 20th century. So we know he was here by 1905 because his youngest child, George Brown Jenkins, was born in 1905 at Conway, Arkansas. In addition to this house and several others in Little Rock, including at least one house for each of his 4 children, Jenkins and his crew built the Logan County Courthouse for the Eastern District in Paris, Arkansas, and they also built a public school building in Hamburg in Ashley County, Arkansas. His office was located at 215 West 2nd Street in Little Rock, in the building just east of the Pyramid Building. In fact, I believe that Jenkins actually built the buff brick house. If you notice the one up higher to the north, it's at 2323 South Chester. And I believe he also built a smaller Craftsman-style house that was located just to the east of this house. The address was 913 West 24th. It's no longer extant, where the parking lot is right now. He was a member of the Winfield Memorial Methodist Church and also the Masonic Lodge of Mapleville. Jenkins' wife, Sally Jo, died in January 1927 at the age of 50 from heart and kidney disease. In June 1929, Jenkins married a Canadian woman named May, M-A-E. In October of that year, Emmet and May Jenkins traded this property with the Mr. W.E. Cox, and they moved to the Westwood Addition in the city of Little Rock, located off Colonel Glenn Road, out southwest of the intersection of Asher and University. When the 1940 census was taken, Jenkins was about 70 years old, and he still reported on the census form that he worked over 50 hours a week as a contractor. Emmet Jenkins died on January 13, 1943 at the age of 74, and his second wife, May, died on November 23, 1959 at the age of 75. After Emmet and May Jenkins moved out of this house in 1929, the house had several occupants. A whole long list for you. Later that year, in 1929, there was a Marvin Craven and his wife Eunice. They lived here. He was an agent for the Fireman's Insurance Company. And so you kind of tell by these people's occupations, it was just a regular middle-class, working-class neighborhood at that point in time. 1930 to 35, Charles F. Knoll and his wife Vivian, and Mr. Knoll was the manager at the Smith Davis Cigar Company. 35 to 39, Mrs. Maxine E. Clemens. She was a widow, and she has one of the more interesting occupations. She worked for a Christian Science group in the 1930s, and it was located at 112 East Capitol. 40 to 43, Frank Waite and his wife Ann, and Mr. Waite was an insurance agent with Shepherd and Company. 1944 to 62, some of the longest occupants of the house was Ben D. Rowland Sr. and his wife Johnny, and he was an attorney with an office in the Rector Building at 405 West 3rd Street in Little Rock. 63 to 67 was Ben Rowland Jr. He was junior attorney for the State Revenue Service, and later in the 60s became director of the State Income Tax Division. Then for a few years after that, his mother, who was then a widow, lived in the house. It was vacant for 4 years in the late 1970s. Then from 79 to 95, it was occupied by James R. Douglas. He was a mechanic with Ketcher and Company. Then in the mid-90s, 96, 97, it was vacant. And then 98, 99, it was owned by Evelyn D. Thomas. On January 21st, 1999, a tornado caused extensive damage to downtown Little Rock, having a particularly hard impact here in the Governor's Mansion Historic District. The storm took out several large trees around this house and throughout the area. It broke windows in the house, and if you look at if you got one of the black and white copies like this that has the photographs on it, if you have one of these and you don't need it, you can share it with your neighbor, please. The top photograph was taken during a survey in 1987. So you can see all of those large trees that are no longer around the house. All right. Then if you look at the bottom photograph, look how it's all cleared out around the house. And notice the gaping hole in the roof. That would be because it's taken right after the 1999 tornado that I just talked about. And you can also see right here where the hole is, it's because it was right above where you're sitting if you're right here. Because the chimney literally came through the roof right here on the west side. So that's before and after the tornado pictures right here. Yeah. So as you can see, a lot of damage was caused during the tornado, and people bought the house between 1999 and 2009. People purchased the house with the intention of rehabilitating it, but nobody ever actually got that completed or lived here for those years. It wasn't rehabbed and occupied again until 2009. Now we heard a little bit about the Ivy Foundation and Alpha Kappa Alpha, but I'm going to tell you, Alpha Kappa Alpha, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more. The Ivy Foundation of Little Rock is the fundraising arm of the Beta Pi Omega, I'll get these right, Beta Pi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. In the fall of 2009, the Ivy Foundation purchased the house from Webb Construction Company, which had just rehabilitated it. And I believe they got in early enough in the process where they could tell them a few things they wanted done in the house as it was being rehabbed. The Ivy Foundation meets 10 months a year, and they usually have at least 100 people at each meeting. Alpha Kappa Alpha was established in 1908. We already heard about that. And they teach leadership skills to girls and women of all ages, and they focus on problems related to social justice, human rights, health, poverty, economic security, environmental sustainability, and maintaining a viable sisterhood. Now, a few details I'm going to tell you so you can notice them whenever you're looking around in just a few minutes. The brick mantle, the built-in window seat, and some original crown molding over in this room. Those are all original to the house. The staircase here has the original wood treads, or the steps themselves are original wood. The newel post at the bottom and the balustrade, Those are all original elements. Even the landing is not original. It's wood laminate floor. And you notice what you're on right now is not original, it's wood laminate floor. Because of, likely, the water damage from all the windows being broken out and the huge hole in the roof after the tornado. The front porch behind me has been glassed in. It was originally open, and in the 1980s photograph of the house, it was screened, but after the 2009 rehab, it was glassed in. The windows were all replaced in 2009 when they rehabbed the house. They removed a downstairs wall to make a huge room. This room was not originally this large. They opened up what was the living room and dining area. The parking lot to the east, I mentioned there was a house over there. It was still here after the 99 tornado, and then I imagine it was either, beyond the point of saving or whatever, it's now gone. They added a door opening in the kitchen. That door back there by the bathrooms was not originally an opening over there. And the upstairs bedrooms are now offices and meeting rooms. Does anybody have any questions for me? And I'm going to turn it over to Edna Ricks to tell you a little bit more about how the process went whenever they bought the house. Okay, Edna Ricks.
Thank you, and good morning. So happy to have you in our meeting house. I must say that the Ivy Foundation began this process in 2008. It was a relatively long process. The mortgage was finalized July 2nd, 2009. And the property actually was founded by the then president of the foundation, Wilhelmina Llewellyn, who thought it would be a great place for us to have sorority meetings and other functions for the sorority. So she brought it to the Ivy Foundation's attention. The Ivy Foundation applied for a conditional use permit and a certificate of compliance to operate a meeting place and a reception facility for the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and its alumni from colleges and universities all over this country. So our members are from all over, not just Arkansas, all over the country. Also, a design review permit for a parking lot was required. The process started when Claudia Watson and I went to the zoning commission, and we began meeting over and over with the zoning commission preservation administrator, who was Kelly Peters at the time. And they said that we had several steps that we would need to follow. First of all, we had to make an application to purchase the property. And then we had to write letters to everyone within 200 feet of this property to see if they had any concerns or objections to the sorority having this house. And we had to let them know that, okay, about 60 days, they would have to let us know if they had objections. And fortunately, we had none. So we were happy about that. Several conditions had to be met, such as city and state codes had to be met and followed. The property had to be kept neat and clean always, and safe. I believe we even had a light installed on the parking lot so that when we are here about dark, we can have safety. Landscaping and a privacy fence was installed. The parking lot itself was constructed. We had to have a certain amount of shrubs and trees, and we have done that. It's kind of hard to keep them going, but we have. all signage, any kind of signage that we put outside had first to be approved. And we had to keep noise to a minimum. Now, you know, of course, that as alumni, we don't make a lot of noise. So we were in good shape with that. And talking about signage, I do want you to notice when you leave that we have a plaque. We're now on the historic preservation. So after the initial process, other members of the foundation started to attend meetings for the zoning commission and the mansion committee. And we had to go just about every month, several times a month, to those meetings and make our plea. Once the approval was given, we began with some of the renovations inside the home and several additions outside, like the parking lot, the handicap ramp we had to have, the privacy fence, those kinds of things. And as Ms. Sylvia mentioned, we of course had to enlarge the inside so we could make room for our members. So since that time, we are ongoing with making improvements in the house. So it is what you see currently. Thank you.
Do y'all have other events here besides your sorority stuff? I mean, do you like
No,
weddings or some kind of parties, that sort of thing?
No, that was one of the stipulations. It had to be all sorority things.
Oh.
Now, we do allow our undergrads from like Philander Smith, ULR, to come and meet, but they must have a graduate advisor with them. We cannot allow them to just come in. So, no, we've been asked, but we have to say no.
Thank you, Edna. All right, as they mentioned earlier, there are refreshments back in the kitchen, so I want to thank the Ivy Foundation again for doing that. That was very nice, above and beyond what you had to do. And thank all of you for coming. You can see me if you have any questions after this. I'll be around. Feel free to look around this floor, look around outside the house if you want to see those architectural elements I was talking about, and feel free to go upstairs. Our next tour is September 6th at Pulaski Heights Baptist Church on Kavanaugh. Thank you all.